I'm Dan.
And I'm Landon.
And we're here to read and discuss the Bible. You can see we're somewhere else today.
I know. Last time we were on brick wall, and now we're out
in the backyard. You can see our lovely trees in the backyard. Yeah. We do this because when we go on the front porch like we normally have, someone seems to be mowing their yard.
Or building something.
Or building something in the garage across the street and pounding on stuff. So we start to make a video and all you hear is hammering.
Yeah, so
now
we're back here.
Maybe this would be the best place.
All you hear is the birds now.
Chirp.
And us.
So we're here to read and discuss the Bible. We're in John chapter 6. Today we're going to actually not read the whole chapter because it is very long. Mm-hmm. And we want to give enough time to devote to part of the chapter. Mm-hmm. So that we're probably going to break this up in 2 parts. But we would really like it if you would subscribe. Hit the subscribe button.
Right there.
Right up there. And hit the thumbs up down below.
Thumbs up down there.
Oh, yeah, thumbs up. And make a comment, please. We really would like to see your comments. Mm-hmm. Now today we're reading from the New King James Version of my iPod Bible.
Yeah,
it has multiple versions.
Yeah,
multiple versions. No matter how you read the Bible, just read the Bible.
Yeah.
But we'll put some links below in the description.
Down here.
It tells you where you can click on to read the Bible with us. Mm-hmm. Different versions if you like. Yeah. And also some links to our church. Mm-hmm. With some videos of our pastor doing a sermon, a couple sermons, and some children's ministry videos. But we will begin to read. John chapter 6. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Then a great multitude followed him, because they saw his signs which he had performed on those who were diseased. And Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. So this was about a year after, I believe, what it was in John 1.
Yeah.
Whenever they were they were having a feast.
Yeah.
And then he went and celebrated the Passover.
Right.
Now remember, Jesus only had 3 years of ministry.
Mm-hmm. So this is into his 2nd year.
This would be going, because it says they went to celebrate the Passover.
Right. So he'd be like.
So this would be 1 year after.
Yeah.
Jesus turned the water into wine.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting to know. It says, now then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread that these may eat? Mm-hmm. I don't know how many a multitude was. Now, so at this point, he said a multitude. This is the story about where Jesus feeds the 5,000 men. And they had women and children. So
I guess in different versions and different Gospels it says 5,000, because somewhere it says it.
Well, it does a little bit. We haven't read it yet, but I know the story. And Jesus feeds 5,000 men and women and children. There's a multitude. That's a lot of people.
That is.
So he was asking Philip, where are we going to buy these people something to eat? Now he already knew the answer. There was no place to get them that much food, and they didn't have the money to buy the food. So Jesus was going to have to perform a miracle, but I think Jesus was just trying to see if Philip knew the answer.
Right.
But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Jesus already knew, like I said. Yeah. Jesus knew what he was going to do. He was just testing Philip to see what Philip would say he wanted to do, what Philip thought should happen.
Yeah.
A lot of times, God will speak to us, and he wants to know what do we think should happen, and we're not thinking about what God can do. We're thinking about our natural, what we can do. And I don't think Jesus was wanting to hear that answer from Philip. I think he really wanted Philip to believe
that Jesus
could
whatever he wanted to do,
whatever Jesus needed. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little.
Wow.
A small amount.
Does that mean if they had that much denarii, everybody would just have like that much bread?
Yeah, so I don't know what it means by have a little, but I know if I sit down to eat and all they have is bread. Right. Well, I mean, I'm gonna bet, if it's a loaf of bread, they haven't obviously. They didn't have a bunch of cut-up bread. Probably they had loaves of bread, and you'd pull off a piece.
Yeah.
I'd probably take the whole end and pull it off and get like a quarter loaf.
Yeah.
So he was meaning that, even all this amount of money, this 200 denarii, which in their day was a lot of money, for 5,000 men plus women and children, even 2,000 or 200, even 200 denarii wouldn't have gave all of them, just a little piece of bread. Like not even a snack.
Right, yeah.
So Philip was, I don't know what Philip thought was why the question, because obviously they didn't have that kind of money.
That much money.
So I don't know what was going through Philip's head other than, I don't know, even if we had this great sum of money, it would only feed him a little bit. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many?"
So Andrew's coming to Jesus and saying, "Hey, I found this kid, and he's got some food."
I don't know. Maybe the child overheard Jesus. What are we going to feed them? I don't know. It doesn't say here. It doesn't say here that Andrew found the boy. It doesn't say that maybe the boy overheard. Maybe his father overheard and said,
brought him forward. Yeah.
If my pastor came up to me and we had 5,000 men, women, and children, and he said, "What are we going to feed all these people?" And one of the other persons of the church says, "Well, if we had all this money, it would only give them a little bit. So what are we going to feed these people?" And then I come over with a little kid and I say, "Oh, I got 5 loaves of bread, little loaves of bread, and 2 fish." I don't know, really. Maybe Andrew was speaking in faith.
Right, like,
because
Jesus, here's what you can work with.
Yeah.
Do something with it.
Because in the natural, why seeing that many people would you bring over a kid with a little bit of bread and some fish? Unless you had faith in Jesus that he could do something with it.
Right.
So maybe Andrew was thinking, well, we have this. So turn the water into wine.
Yeah.
So turn the loaves and bread, and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah.
But Andrew also said, "But what are these among so many?"
Right.
So, I don't know. Then Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in numbers, about 5,000, the men.
Yeah.
But there was at least one kid.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the man.
That would lead us to think there's more than one kid there.
Yeah. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he gave thanks, so he prayed over them, thank God for the loaves, he distributed them to the disciples. So he broke them apart, like I said, with the loaf of bread. He tore them apart into pieces, and he had his disciples, and he gave some to each one of them. And the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish. So he gave both the fish and the bread to the disciples, and the disciples started giving it to the people.
Yeah.
As much as they wanted.
Wow.
As much as they wanted. Now, I don't know about you, but now it said the multitude followed him from another place.
Right.
So they walked across whatever they walked. I don't know. Maybe it was around the lake or the ocean or wherever they walked. Right. And they walked and they were hungry. Mm-hmm. I don't know what time of day it was. But they ate as much as they wanted to eat.
So it's like a
Now, they're
buffet.
probably, when we do events for kids, we have to assume there's some kids, like if you're giving pizza, there's some kids that want one piece.
Right.
And there's some kids.
Or not kids.
That might want a half a pizza. I don't know anyone like that.
Me either.
But, you have to account for some will want more than others. It says here that they ate as much as they wanted.
Right. So if they wanted 5 pieces of pizza, they had it.
Or a whole fish.
Right.
He had 2 to start. Maybe they wanted both. And all 5 loaves.
Like that little kid that
I'm
came
sure
up,
that some of them wasn't skinny. There might have been some husky fellas. But, they wanted more than the little kids. Yeah. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remained so nothing is lost." I've heard some people say that they, at that point, they could have kept the food, or maybe gave some of the food afterwards to the people, or even gave it to the community that were around them. Therefore they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." They would carry enough food in these baskets that would last them a couple days.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of food. That's a lot of food.
So for 12 of them to be filled.
12 baskets of fragments.
Yeah.
And they started
with
2 fish and 5 barley loaves. Little,
like that big.
From what I've read, they were like little kid loaves.
Yeah.
Not loaves.
Like those ones you get at Walmart that are in the pack. They're like that big.
The little round loaves, like you could take butter and eat one at a time.
Yeah.
Therefore, when Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, I told you, see, they were looking for Moses the second. They weren't looking for what they got.
Right.
What they got was a savior of the world. Mm-hmm. What they wanted was Moses number 2.
A savior of Israel.
Right. What they wanted was like a movie, you see a movie, Moses.
The hero comes in.
And then they wanted Moses number 2. Because they wanted to be freed from the slavery
of the
Roman. I really believe that the reason the Sadducees, the Pharisees, all the learners of the day didn't believe Jesus was because they really wanted a king.
Yeah. They wanted Moses number 2.
Number 2. They didn't want Jesus number 1.
Right.
They wanted Moses number 2. He departed again to the mountain by himself alone. Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and went over the sea towards Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. Then the sea arose because a great wind was blowing.
Wow.
Big storm.
Wind.
It was on a big lake.
Yeah.
So you imagine, like, I've been on Lake Erie. And it's not as big, of course, as the ocean, but when you're in the middle of it,
it's hard
at
to
certain
see
places
land.
You can see in the middle of Lake Erie. I'm originally from Ohio. You can see Canada, and certain places you can see Ohio.
Certain parts you can see Michigan.
Michigan, yeah. But there are certain parts where you see water.
Yeah.
You don't
can't see any land.
So and the waves and the wind will whip up on you, and there has been people killed on Lake Erie just from a storm. So imagine that this is the same type of thing. A big wind came. They were closer to the ocean than in the middle of Ohio.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that winds from the ocean could have came and affected them. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, see, that tells you they were rowing for 3 or 4 miles in this in the sea. So they were in the sea. They weren't in the lake.
Right.
They saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. Now, it didn't say that they knew Jesus was walking on the sea.
Right.
They saw Jesus, and they were afraid.
Know who it was.
They didn't know what was going on. They're 3 to 4 miles out. It's dark. Maybe lightning going on, the wind and the waves, and it's just
then there's just this thing coming at them from the water.
Yeah.
They didn't see where it came from because they were like 4 miles away from the land.
They didn't know. They saw something on the water, and it was dark, and they were like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know it was Jesus.
Right.
Obviously, they were afraid. They're probably screaming their heads off.
Yeah.
But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." How many times does Jesus want to speak to us and say, "It is I. Do not be afraid"? In the middle of a problem, maybe we don't hear him. Then they willingly received him into the boat. I don't know what else they would do.
Yeah.
They'd say, "Get away! Take a swim." I don't think so. And immediately the boat was at the land where they were going.
Really? So it just poof. We're
It
over
didn't.
there at
It
the
said they were
land
3 to 4 miles away
from the water.
Now I don't know
from
how
the
far
land
they were away from the land, but it doesn't make a mention that they were close to the land.
to where they were going.
And it says they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. So I don't know, I don't know. It's still a miracle. He walked on water.
Walking on the water.
Even if they were 30 feet from the shore.
Right.
But you would think that it would mention that they were that close to the shore.
Yeah. But that was still
They
a
made a
miracle.
point to mention that they rode for 3 to 4 miles.
Right.
I would think if they were close, like they would say, as they were coming to the beach.
Right.
But they
Jesus
didn't.
walked on the
Jesus
water.
walked on the water. Nevertheless, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Jesus was 5 feet from the beach.
Right.
Obviously, he was walking on the water.
Yeah.
So that in itself is a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things no one else saw but his disciples. He said many times that to his disciples, you're a generation of unbelievers. You don't believe anything until you see it.
Right.
So I think sometimes Jesus did things to try to help his disciples believe in what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And believe me, other than Judas, they all stuck with him to the end.
Mm-hmm. Even though Peter had problems.
Peter had problems at the end, and Jesus told him about that, but we haven't got there yet.
Right.
But nevertheless, he did walk on the water.
Yeah.
We're going to stop here because this is at verse 21, and there's a large, important part to come after this, and it's about 40 verses.
Yeah.
And this video is we don't want to make this video 45 minutes.
Right.
So we're going to stop right there, and we're going to make John chapter 6 part 2. So we really appreciate you joining us today to read and discuss the Bible. Again, we'd like for you to subscribe at the top.
Right there.
And favorite it, or thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
At the bottom. Do they do
bottom.
favorites anymore?
No.
On YouTube?
They do. They don't do ratings
Yeah, that's
anymore.
right. They don't do ratings. When I first joined YouTube, you can rate it 1 through 5, but I think with thumbs up is better.
Yep. So thumbs up at the bottom.
No, not like that. Not
no.
up like this.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Ding.
And
at the bottom right there.
Over here?
Yep.
Down here.
And then
comment. Leave a comment down at the bottom. And whatever you do, read the Bible. Enjoy the Bible. Read it for yourself and leave us a comment.
Yep. About what you got out of this.
Yeah, what you received out of this. So, but until next time.
Bye.
God bless.